Maybe now you'll finally wash away the illusion that you deserve Ethan." The mistress sneered as red wine ran down Olivia's dress, and the ballroom erupted in cruel laughter. Everyone waited for her to break, but she didn't. Olivia slowly picked up her phone and called her brothers. 3 calm voices answered, "Stay exactly where you are, we're coming." What happened next would expose a betrayal, destroy a powerful man, and by the time Ethan understood everything, it was already too late. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps this channel grow. Now let's begin. The Carter mansion sat on a hill overlooking the glittering city skyline, its glass walls reflecting the golden evening light like a jewel above the city. Anyone driving past would assume the people inside lived a life untouched by ordinary problems. The house itself looked like something pulled from the pages of a luxury magazine: sleek architecture, manicured lawns, imported marble floors, and a long driveway where expensive cars rested like sculptures. Inside that mansion, Olivia Carter stood in front of a tall mirror in the dressing room, adjusting the delicate clasp of a diamond bracelet around her wrist. Her reflection stared back at her with practiced elegance. The emerald gown she wore hugged her figure perfectly. The fabric shimmered softly whenever she moved, the kind of dress that photographers loved capturing under bright lights. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in glossy waves that fell over one shoulder. From the outside, Olivia Carter looked like a woman living a dream life. Behind her, the door opened and Ethan Carter stepped inside. He looked every bit the powerful businessman the city admired. His tailored black tuxedo fit him like it had been sculpted onto his body. A silver watch gleamed on his wrist, and his dark hair was neatly combed back. For a moment he studied Olivia silently. He said finally, "Everyone's all ready." Olivia glanced at him through the mirror. "The Sterling Foundation Gala doesn't start for another hour. People like to arrive early when they know cameras will be there." His tone was casual, but Olivia sensed the distance beneath it. That distance had become more noticeable in the past year. Once, Ethan would have walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Once, he would have teased her about taking too long to get ready. Now he simply stood there, checking his phone. Olivia turned away from the mirror and faced him fully. "You seem distracted tonight." Ethan slipped his phone into his pocket quickly, as if the comment caught him off guard. "Just business." "You say that about everything these days." Ethan gave a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Running a company isn't exactly relaxing." Olivia nodded slowly. The conversation ended there, hanging in the air like an unfinished sentence. They walked downstairs together, their footsteps echoing through the marble hallway. The Carter name carried weight in the city. Ethan owned Carter Global Holdings, one of the fastest-growing tech investment companies in the region. Olivia, on the other hand, had built a reputation through charity foundations and high-profile philanthropic events. Together, they had become a power couple people admired. Or envied. Outside, their black luxury sedan waited at the front of the driveway. The driver opened the door respectfully. As they settled into the back seat, Olivia looked out the window at the city lights stretching into the distance. Tonight's gala had been her idea. Months of planning had gone into the event. The Sterling Foundation raised money for educational programs and youth initiatives. Olivia had personally invited nearly every influential figure in the city. It was meant to be a celebration. Yet something about the evening felt slightly off. She couldn't explain why. The car glided down the hill and merged into the evening traffic. Neither of them spoke during the drive. The silence between them felt heavier than the city lights outside. The Sterling Grand Hotel stood like a palace in the center of downtown. Its towering entrance was lined with velvet ropes, flashing cameras, and luxury vehicles dropping off elegantly dressed guests. The glass doors opened into a massive ballroom glowing with chandeliers that sparkled like constellations above the crowd. Inside, waiters moved gracefully between tables carrying silver trays of champagne. Soft music filled the air while guests in designer gowns and tailored suits mingled beneath the warm golden lights. Olivia stepped inside beside Ethan, immediately greeted by familiar faces. "Olivia, this event looks incredible," a woman exclaimed while giving her a quick embrace. You outdid yourself again, another guest added. Compliments came from every direction. Olivia moved through the crowd with calm confidence, greeting donors, sponsors, and city officials. Every conversation reinforced her reputation as someone who knew how to bring powerful people together. Across the room, Ethan shook hands with business partners. From a distance, they still looked like the perfect couple, successful, elegant, admired. But as Olivia finished speaking with one of the foundation donors, something caught her attention. Near the bar, Ethan stood talking to a woman she didn't recognize. The woman was striking. Tall. Confidence. She wore a silver satin dress that shimmered under the lights, hugging her curves perfectly. Her long dark hair cascaded over her shoulders in silky waves. But it wasn't the woman's appearance that made Olivia pause. It was the way she stood close to Ethan. Too close. The woman leaned slightly toward him as they talked, her hand resting lightly on his arm as if the contact was natural. Olivia felt a small knot tighten in her chest. She began walking toward them. The closer she got, the more obvious the familiarity between them became. Ethan laughed at something the woman said. A genuine laugh. Olivia hadn't heard that sound from him in a while. When she finally reached them, Ethan looked up. Oh, Olivia. There was a brief pause before he spoke again. This is Vanessa Cole. Vanessa turned toward Olivia with a smile that was polite but difficult to read. So you're the famous Olivia Carter, Vanessa said smoothly. Her voice carried confidence, almost amusement. Olivia extended her hand. Nice to meet you. Vanessa shook it lightly. I've heard so much about you. Olivia glanced briefly at Ethan. From Ethan? Vanessa smiled faintly but didn't answer directly. Your events are legendary. The comment sounded like a compliment, yet something beneath the tone felt strange. Ethan cleared his throat slightly. Vanessa is working on a new investment project we've been discussing. Olivia nodded slowly. That sounds interesting. But inside her mind, a quiet alarm had begun ringing. Something about this introduction felt rehearsed. Something about Vanessa's smile felt deliberate. And something about Ethan's sudden stiffness made the entire moment feel unnatural. After a few more polite exchanges, Olivia excused herself and continued greeting guests. Yet throughout the evening she noticed something unsettling. Vanessa kept appearing near Ethan. Across the ballroom. Near the bar. On the terrace. Each time they seemed locked in quiet conversations that ended abruptly whenever Olivia came near. The knot in Olivia's chest tightened further. Still, she maintained her graceful composure. After all, tonight was about the foundation. Not suspicion. Not drama. But the night was only beginning. The ballroom had grown louder as the evening progressed. Laughter floated through the air while champagne glasses clinked against each other. Music drifted softly from the live band performing near the stage. Guests moved freely around the room, enjoying the glamorous atmosphere Olivia had carefully created. At the center of it all, Olivia stood speaking with two sponsors when she sensed movement nearby. She turned slightly. Vanessa Cole was approaching. In her hand she carried a glass of red wine. Her confident walk drew subtle attention from the surrounding guests. Olivia finished her conversation politely before turning fully toward her. Vanessa stopped a few steps away. Up close, her smile seemed sharper. You really know how to host an event, Vanessa said casually. Thank you, Olivia replied. Her voice remained calm, though the tension between them felt obvious. Several nearby guests began paying attention to the interaction. Vanessa glanced around the ballroom slowly. So many important people here tonight. Olivia nodded. The foundation has strong support. Vanessa swirled the wine gently in her glass, watching the deep red liquid circle the crystal. Then she looked back at Olivia. You must feel proud. I do. Vanessa tilted her head slightly, studying her with quiet curiosity. It must also feel exhausting. Olivia frowned faintly. Exhausting? Vanessa took a small step closer. Keeping up appearances can be tiring. The comment hung in the air. Nearby conversations slowed as people sensed the shift in tone. Olivia remained composed. I'm not sure what you mean. Vanessa smiled again. Oh, I think you do. And before anyone could fully process what was happening, Vanessa lifted the wine glass and flung its contents directly into Olivia's face. The deep red liquid splashed across her hair, her cheeks, and the front of her emerald gown. Gasps exploded throughout the ballroom. Several guests stepped backward in shock. The music faltered briefly as the band members looked toward the disturbance. For a moment the entire room froze. Olivia stood motionless. Wine dripped slowly down her face. The rich fabric of her dress darkened where the liquid soaked into it. Across the room, cameras lifted instinctively. Whispers began spreading like wildfire. Vanessa lowered the empty glass calmly. A small laugh escaped her lips. Maybe now you'll finally wash away the illusion that you deserve Ethan. The words cut through the silence like a blade. Olivia turned her head slowly. Her eyes searched the room until they landed on Ethan. He stood only a few feet away, watching. Everyone watched him. Guests waited for him to react, to defend his wife, to confront the woman who had just humiliated her in front of hundreds of people. But Ethan didn't move. His face showed discomfort, confusion, but not anger, not outrage. He simply stood there, silent. That silence felt louder than the gasps filling the room. Olivia stared at him for several long seconds, waiting, hoping. But the moment stretched painfully, and Ethan still said nothing. The red wine continued dripping slowly from Olivia's hair onto the marble floor. A waiter standing nearby looked completely frozen, unsure whether to approach or stay away. Around them, guests whispered to each other. Some people looked shocked. Others looked fascinated. Public drama among wealthy elites was rare and strangely captivating. Vanessa crossed her arms casually. "Well," she said lightly. Olivia didn't respond. Instead, she reached for a linen napkin from a nearby table and calmly wiped the wine from her face. Her movements were slow and controlled. The room remained silent. Finally, she looked at Ethan again. Their eyes met across the small distance. His expression still carried hesitation. Olivia realized something in that moment. The silence wasn't confusing. It was a choice. And that realization changed something inside her. She looked away from him. Without raising her voice or causing further commotion, Olivia walked to a nearby chair and sat down. Guests shifted nervously as she passed. The stain on her gown looked almost black under the ballroom lights. Vanessa watched her with a smirk. "Running out of dignity can happen suddenly," she said loudly enough for several guests to hear. Still, Olivia remained silent. She reached into her small evening purse and removed her phone. Her fingers moved across the screen quickly. The call connected after only one ring. She spoke quietly. "I need you." There was a brief pause while the person on the other end responded. "Yes," Olivia said softly. "Now." She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her purse. Then she leaned back in the chair calmly. The ballroom buzzed with whispers. Some guests wondered if security would remove Vanessa. Others expected Olivia to leave the event. But Olivia did neither. She simply sat there, waiting. Vanessa looked slightly amused by the calm reaction. "You're still here," she said. Olivia lifted her eyes slowly. "Yes." Vanessa laughed quietly. "That's impressive confidence." Olivia dabbed another napkin against her dress. "Not confidence." Her voice was calm. "Patience." Vanessa rolled her eyes and turned away, clearly losing interest in the silent standoff. But across the room, Ethan watched Olivia carefully now. Something about her composure seemed to make him uneasy. 10 minutes passed. The tension in the ballroom grew thicker with every second. Then suddenly, the massive doors at the entrance burst open. Every head in the ballroom turned toward the entrance. 3 men walked inside. They moved with quiet authority that immediately commanded attention. Each of them wore a dark tailored suit. Each of them carried the same sharp, confident posture. And each of them looked strikingly similar to Olivia. The first man was tall and broad-shouldered, his expression calm but intimidating. Behind him walked a slightly younger man with piercing eyes and a lawyer's calculated composure. The third moved with restless energy, scanning the room quickly. Conversations died instantly. Even the band stopped playing. The men walked across the ballroom floor without hesitation. Guests instinctively stepped aside to clear a path. When they reached Olivia's table, the tallest one stopped. He looked down at his sister. His eyes took in the stained dress, the wine in her hair, the silent crowd watching. His jaw tightened slightly. "What happened here?" he asked quietly. The question carried a weight that made nearby guests uncomfortable. Olivia looked up at him. Her voice remained steady. "A misunderstanding." The second brother glanced around the room until his eyes landed on Ethan. Recognition flickered across his face. The third brother followed his gaze. Now all three of them were looking at Ethan Carter. The tension in the room rose instantly, because everyone knew exactly who these men were. Alexander Hayes, Daniel Hayes, Marcus Hayes. The Hayes family was one of the most powerful families in the city, and Olivia Carter had been born Olivia Hayes. Marcus took a step forward, his voice low. "Someone explain why our sister is sitting here covered in wine." No one spoke. Vanessa, who had been standing confidently earlier, suddenly looked less comfortable. Alexander's gaze slowly swept across the crowd until it stopped on her. "You," he said calmly. "Start talking." The storm had just arrived, and the night was far from over. The ballroom had been loud and glamorous minutes earlier, but the arrival of the Hayes brothers drained the atmosphere of celebration. The air now carried tension so thick that even the waiters stopped moving. Alexander Hayes stood directly in front of Olivia's chair, his tall frame casting a shadow over the table. His eyes slowly studied the red stain across her emerald gown. For a man known in the city for his calm leadership and disciplined business style, the small tightening of his jaw revealed enough. Daniel Hayes remained slightly behind him, his sharp gaze moving through the crowd like a man quietly gathering evidence. Marcus Hayes showed no effort to hide his anger. His eyes flickered from guest to guest until they landed on Vanessa. Vanessa shifted her weight slightly, but lifted her chin, attempting to maintain the same confidence she had shown earlier. Marcus stepped forward slowly. His voice came out steady but filled with restrained fury as he asked who thought it was acceptable to humiliate their sister in a room full of people. The question lingered in the air. Guests exchanged glances but avoided speaking. Some of them had witnessed the incident clearly, yet none wanted to become involved in a conflict between two powerful families. Alexander's attention turned to Olivia again. He crouched slightly so he could look directly into her face. He noticed the faint redness around her eyes, the damp strands of hair clinging to her cheek, and the wine soaking through the fabric of her dress. For a moment, his voice softened. He asked her calmly who had done it. Olivia paused. Her eyes moved slowly across the room. They passed over Ethan. He stood only a few steps away, still silent. Then her gaze moved toward Vanessa. The pause was enough. Marcus followed the direction of her eyes and stepped forward immediately. Vanessa raised her chin. Her voice came out defensive but still edged with arrogance. She explained that Olivia had been pretending for years to be the perfect wife while Ethan had clearly moved on emotionally. A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. Marcus let out a short, humorless laugh. He asked if she truly believed humiliating someone publicly was the best way to prove that point. Vanessa shrugged lightly. She said some illusions deserved to be shattered dramatically. The words were barely finished before Marcus reached for the nearest champagne glass on a table. He slammed it down hard enough that the sound cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot. The glass shattered. Several guests gasped. Alexander lifted a hand slightly, signaling Marcus to control himself. Marcus stepped back, but his expression promised that restraint was temporary. Daniel walked forward now. Unlike Marcus, he did not look angry. He looked calculating. His eyes settled on Ethan. He asked him one simple question. Why had he allowed this to happen? The question echoed through the silent ballroom. Ethan shifted slightly. He looked at Olivia, then at Vanessa, then back at Daniel. The hesitation lasted too long. And in that hesitation, everyone understood something deeply uncomfortable. Ethan Carter had watched the humiliation happen, and he had chosen not to intervene. The tension in the room climbed higher as Daniel stepped closer to Ethan. Daniel's reputation in the city was well known. As one of the most formidable corporate attorneys in the region, he was used to dismantling powerful opponents with quiet precision. Now he studied Ethan the same way. He asked again why Ethan had stood there silently while someone attacked his wife. Ethan tried to compose himself. He said the situation had escalated quickly, and he had not wanted to cause an even bigger public scene. Marcus scoffed loudly. He pointed out that a bigger scene had already happened when wine was thrown in Olivia's face. Guests shifted nervously around them. Alexander remained beside Olivia, but his eyes never left Ethan. The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Vanessa suddenly stepped forward again. She claimed Ethan had not defended Olivia because deep down he knew the marriage was already over. Her tone carried a sharp confidence. Some guests began whispering again. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Daniel turned his head slowly toward Vanessa. He asked her if she believed humiliating someone publicly made her position stronger. Vanessa shrugged slightly. She said the truth often made people uncomfortable. Marcus began pacing slowly, his hands sliding into the pockets of his suit as he tried to contain himself. The tension in his shoulders showed that containment was fragile. He suddenly turned toward Ethan and asked if he intended to say anything at all. Ethan opened his mouth as if preparing to speak. But Alexander spoke first. His voice carried a quiet authority that instantly silenced everyone. He said there had been a warning 3 years ago. The words fell into the room like a stone into water. Ethan's face changed immediately. The color drained from it. Several guests looked confused. Vanessa frowned slightly. Marcus folded his arms, watching Ethan closely. Daniel continued calmly. He explained that when Ethan married Olivia, the Hayes family had made one thing very clear. Respect was not optional. The silence in the ballroom deepened. Alexander looked at Ethan with a calm that felt far more dangerous than anger. He asked if Ethan remembered that conversation. Ethan swallowed slightly. He nodded. The room began buzzing again with whispers. Guests who had originally arrived expecting an elegant charity gala now realized they were witnessing the collapse of a powerful marriage. And no one dared leave. Vanessa looked between the brothers and Ethan, clearly trying to understand the meaning behind the warning that had just been mentioned. Marcus leaned against the edge of a table, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. He explained that before the wedding, the Hayes family had taken Ethan aside for a private conversation. Not a threat. Not intimidation. Just a reminder. Olivia had grown up protected by a family that valued loyalty above everything else. If Ethan ever humiliated her publicly or treated her with disrespect, they would step in. Marcus let that statement settle in the air. Then he added that tonight seemed to qualify. Vanessa laughed lightly, trying to dismiss the seriousness of the situation. She suggested the brothers were overreacting to a harmless moment. Daniel looked at her calmly. He asked if throwing wine in someone's face at a charity event felt harmless. Vanessa crossed her arms, but did not answer. Alexander placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. He asked quietly if she wanted to leave. Olivia looked around the ballroom. Guests avoided her gaze. The event she had spent months planning had turned into a spectacle. But her expression remained calm. She shook her head slowly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. He asked if she was certain. Olivia nodded again. Then she did something unexpected. She stood up. The stained dress shimmered under the chandelier light. Instead of appearing humiliated, she carried herself with an almost unsettling composure. She walked slowly toward Ethan. The crowd instinctively stepped aside. When she reached him, she studied his face carefully. There was disappointment in her eyes, but also something colder. She asked him if he had anything to say. Ethan looked overwhelmed. He attempted to explain that the situation had gotten out of control. He said Vanessa had acted impulsively. The explanation sounded weak even to him. Olivia listened quietly. Then she nodded once. Not in agreement. The sound echoed across the ballroom. When she reached them, Alexander placed his hand gently on her shoulder again. He asked quietly if she was ready to go. Olivia looked around the room once more. She noticed guests pretending not to stare. Phones partially hidden but still recording. Vanessa watching with growing irritation. And Ethan standing alone in the center of the chaos. She finally nodded. Marcus immediately straightened. He gestured toward the exit. But before they began walking, Daniel paused. He stepped toward Ethan one last time. His voice remained low but clear enough for several nearby guests to hear. He reminded Ethan of something simple. Marriage came with responsibility. And silence in moments like this carried consequences. Ethan looked like he wanted to argue. But no words came out. Daniel leaned slightly closer. He said the next conversation would not happen in a ballroom. It would happen somewhere far less forgiving. The meaning was obvious. A courtroom. Daniel stepped back. The brothers formed a quiet protective circle around Olivia as they guided her toward the exit. Guests parted immediately, creating a path through the crowd. Vanessa scoffed quietly, clearly frustrated that Olivia was leaving without breaking down emotionally. Marcus glanced back at her briefly. His stare alone was enough to silence her. The massive ballroom doors opened again. Cool night air rushed inside. As they stepped outside into the hotel entrance, Olivia finally exhaled deeply. The city lights glowed across the skyline. For the first time that night, her composure cracked slightly. Marcus asked softly if she was all right. Olivia nodded, though her voice trembled slightly when she spoke. She admitted that the wine had not been the worst part. The silence had been. The brothers guided Olivia toward the waiting car outside the hotel. Traffic moved slowly along the street while the distant noise of the city hummed around them. Alexander opened the car door, but Olivia didn't get in immediately. Instead, she leaned against the side of the vehicle, looking up at the night sky. Marcus asked again if she was sure she was all right. She wiped the last traces of wine from her cheek with a napkin. Then she looked at them. Her expression had changed. The sadness was still there. But something else had appeared beneath it. Resolve. Daniel noticed it immediately. He asked her quietly how long she had known. Marcus frowned. Alexander looked at Daniel curiously. Olivia hesitated for only a moment. Then she admitted something that stunned them. She had known about Vanessa for months. Marcus stared at her in disbelief. He asked why she had said nothing. Why she had allowed things to continue. Olivia explained that she had been gathering information. Marcus looked ready to explode again. But Daniel remained calm. He understood instantly. Evidence. Olivia nodded slowly. She said Ethan had grown careless. Phone messages. Financial transfers. Travel records. Everything had been quietly documented. Alexander folded his arms thoughtfully. He asked if she had already made a decision. Olivia looked back toward the hotel entrance where the gala was still happening. Music had started again inside, but the celebration would never feel the same. She told them the humiliation tonight had simply accelerated something that had already begun. Marcus asked what she planned to do next. Olivia opened the car door and finally stepped inside. Before closing it, she looked up at Daniel. Her voice was calm but firm. She told him it was time to start the divorce. And Daniel Hayes smiled slightly. Because as one of the most feared lawyers in the city, he already knew exactly how that battle would end. The Hayes family car moved quietly through the night traffic, its tinted windows shielding the tense silence inside. The city lights flickered across Olivia's face as she sat in the back seat between Marcus and Alexander. The wine stain on her emerald gown had begun to dry, leaving a dark patch across the fabric like a reminder of the humiliation she had just endured. No one spoke for several minutes. The driver focused on the road, wisely ignoring the heavy atmosphere in the back of the car. Daniel sat in the passenger seat, already scrolling through his phone. His fingers moved quickly as he opened files, notes, and messages. His mind had shifted fully into professional mode. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. He leaned forward slightly, his voice carrying restrained anger as he asked Olivia again why she had allowed things to reach this point. From his perspective, the betrayal alone was reason enough to destroy Ethan months ago. Olivia looked down at her hands. She explained calmly that reacting too early would have given Ethan the advantage. Marcus frowned. He did not enjoy patience when it came to protecting his sister. Daniel turned slightly in his seat, joining the conversation without looking up from his phone. He explained the situation with quiet clarity. In a divorce involving someone like Ethan Carter, emotions were useless. Evidence was everything. Marcus sighed heavily. Alexander remained quiet beside Olivia, studying her expression carefully. She seemed tired but not broken. That observation reassured him. Daniel continued explaining what would happen next. The moment they arrived home, he would begin preparing the divorce filing. Given the circumstances, he intended to move fast. Marcus chuckled darkly. He asked whether Ethan even realized what was coming. Daniel finally looked up. He admitted Ethan probably expected an emotional confrontation or a messy argument. What Ethan would not expect was legal precision. The car slowed as it approached the Hayes family estate gates. Security opened the entrance immediately. Inside the quiet luxury of the estate driveway, Olivia leaned her head back against the seat. The night had changed everything. Daniel spoke again, his tone thoughtful. He mentioned that Ethan had made one critical mistake long before tonight. Alexander glanced toward him. Daniel explained that during the early years of the marriage, Ethan had agreed to a prenuptial contract designed to protect Olivia. The agreement had a strict infidelity clause. Marcus smiled slowly. Now the situation began to make more sense. Daniel added that public humiliation combined with financial misconduct could become devastating in court. Olivia closed her eyes briefly. For months she had waited for the moment when truth would finally surface. Tonight had delivered that moment in the most dramatic way possible. When the car stopped in front of the estate steps, Daniel stepped out first. He turned toward Olivia and spoke calmly. The war had officially begun. Back at the Sterling Grand Hotel, the gala had resumed, but the atmosphere felt strained. Guests still whispered about the incident that had taken place. Ethan stood alone near the bar, gripping a glass of whiskey that he had barely touched. Across the room, Vanessa tried to maintain her composure, but the earlier confidence in her posture had begun to fade. The attention of the entire room had shifted toward them in a way neither of them had expected. Ethan finally turned toward her. His voice was low but tense as he asked why she had done something so reckless. Vanessa looked surprised by the accusation. From her perspective, she had simply forced the truth into the open. She reminded him that he had been complaining about the marriage for months. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Complaining in private was very different from humiliating Olivia Carter in public. Vanessa scoffed. She argued that Olivia had deserved the reality check. But Ethan knew better. His mind was racing through the consequences. The Hayes family was not the type to ignore public disrespect. Marcus alone could cause chaos. Daniel, however, was far more dangerous. Vanessa tried to reassure him that Olivia would calm down eventually. Ethan laughed bitterly. She clearly did not understand Olivia. If Olivia had screamed or cried in the ballroom, he might have believed reconciliation was possible. But Olivia had remained calm. Too calm. That realization began tightening a knot in his chest. Vanessa attempted to dismiss his worries. She suggested they leave the gala and go somewhere quieter. Ethan shook his head. His attention had shifted toward something else entirely. His phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out. The screen displayed an email notification from Daniel Hayes. Ethan opened it slowly. His eyes scanned the document. His face went pale. Vanessa noticed the sudden change immediately. She asked what was wrong. Ethan lowered the phone slightly. The message was brief but devastating. Daniel Hayes had formally notified him that divorce proceedings were beginning immediately. Vanessa frowned. She asked if he was serious. Ethan stared at the message again. The legal tone, the attached documents, the official language. There was no misunderstanding. Olivia had already moved. And she had moved fast. For the first time that night, genuine panic appeared in Ethan's eyes. Several days later, the courtroom buzzed with quiet anticipation. News of the Carter divorce had spread quickly across the city. Powerful business leaders, reporters, and curious observers filled the gallery seats. At the front of the courtroom, Olivia sat beside Daniel. She wore a simple white suit, elegant but understated. Her calm posture suggested a woman fully prepared for what was about to happen. Across the room, Ethan sat with his legal team. The confidence he once carried had faded. The judge entered and the proceedings began. Daniel stood first. His voice carried the calm authority of someone completely in control. He began outlining the legal basis for the divorce filing. Infidelity, breach of marital agreement, financial misconduct. Each accusation was supported by carefully organized evidence. Screens displayed text messages between Ethan and Vanessa. Travel records showed secret trips. Bank transfers revealed money being moved from joint accounts. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom as the evidence continued. Ethan's lawyer attempted to challenge some of the documents, but Daniel responded with additional verification. Every piece had been authenticated. Olivia sat silently throughout the presentation. Her expression remained composed. Across the room, Ethan looked increasingly uncomfortable. But Daniel had saved the most damaging evidence for last. He introduced financial records connected to offshore accounts. The documents revealed that Ethan had quietly transferred significant marital assets into accounts linked to Vanessa. The courtroom reacted instantly. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. Daniel explained calmly that such actions violated the financial protection clause within the prenuptial agreement. The clause had been specifically designed to prevent hidden asset transfers during marital disputes. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. Ethan's legal team struggled to respond. For the first time since the trial began, the balance of power in the room was unmistakable. Olivia had not come to court unprepared. She had come with proof. And proof was impossible to argue with. Weeks of legal proceedings finally led to the final day of the case. The courtroom once again filled with observers eager to witness the outcome. Olivia sat calmly beside Daniel. Her brothers occupied the row behind her, their presence alone enough to intimidate anyone watching. Ethan looked exhausted. The confident businessman who once dominated boardrooms now appeared worn down by the relentless legal pressure. The judge reviewed the final statements carefully. Daniel summarized the case with precision. He reminded the court of the documented infidelity, the public humiliation, and the financial misconduct involving marital assets. Each point reinforced the violation of the prenuptial agreement. Ethan's closed his file. The battle had ended exactly as he predicted. Several weeks later, the Carter mansion looked different. Not physically, but emotionally. The house that once held tension and secrets now felt quiet and peaceful. On the large terrace overlooking the city skyline, Olivia sat with her 3 brothers around a dinner table. The evening air carried the soft sounds of the city below. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying Olivia carefully. He admitted he was still trying to understand something. Alexander looked amused. Daniel simply sipped his wine, already knowing where the conversation was heading. Marcus asked Olivia directly if she had planned everything from the beginning. Olivia smiled slightly. Not the dramatic humiliation at the gala, but everything after. Olivia admitted the truth slowly. For months she had suspected Ethan's betrayal. Instead of confronting him immediately, she had decided to observe quietly. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. He asked if she had intentionally allowed Vanessa to attend the gala. Olivia looked out at the city lights. Her answer came calmly. She had personally approved the guest list. Daniel laughed softly. Alexander smiled. Marcus stared at her. She explained that sometimes people exposed themselves better when they believed no one was watching. Vanessa had believed she was claiming victory that night. Instead, she had provided the final piece of evidence Olivia needed. Marcus burst into laughter. He admitted he underestimated his sister. Daniel raised his glass slightly. Alexander nodded proudly. Olivia looked across the skyline one last time. For the first time in years, she felt something she had forgotten. Freedom. And somewhere in the city, Ethan Carter finally understood the most painful lesson of all. Silence in the face of betrayal could cost everything. Hope you enjoyed this beautiful story. Please don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next one.